Greetings, everyone. I'm Antonio Garcia, and welcome to another episode of Short Stories with Friends. I did rename it. It used to be called Short Stories from the Mind of a Madman, which is like my book series. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to rename it because I wanted to start. I have a podcast, and it was Short Stories from the Mind of a Madman, which is my recordings. It's like I don't want to mix the two because the live one is more entertaining, it's more fun, as opposed to just the podcast. So I was like, I need a different name, so I came up with Short Stories with Friends, and so that's kind of came about. So you might be just a little thrown off with a new name, but if you saw the banner, you know what's going on. I've got my fellow author and whiskey connoisseur, Fred Cubberly. Cubberly, no, I knew I was going to mess it up. So everybody that watches knows I'm terrible with names, so even though he just told me 2 seconds ago, I knew I'd mess it up. But anyway, so we got a great show for you today. We are going to start off by talking about some of his writing material. He's got, 3? Working on your 4th book now?
3 books and working on the 4th.
And then we're going to read my story, A Door in the Woods. And then we are going to have a little game at the end. We're going to line up a little bit of bourbon here. And then we're going to have a taste-off to see whose palate is more refined. Now, I'm terrible. I don't know the difference between bourbons. Like, I don't know the difference between other things. And he is kind of like still kind of recovering with a sense of taste and smell. So it should be interesting. It'd be like, last time when I was with Megan and she'd just done arms, we had a push-up contest. I kind of give myself an unintended advantage. So we'll see if maybe that kind of helps balance the schedule a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into the intro, and then we'll get into talking about some of your works. All right, let's get started. All right, we are back. And I do have his 2 books down there. I didn't get a chance to get the 3rd one on there, but I do have the 2 books down there at the bottom. Take a look at. They're available on Amazon. So let's talk whiskey. All right. Now, did it start with whiskey or did it start with wine or?
It actually started with wine. Well, I could say it started with whiskey, but what happened was I was a young guy and I would drink whiskey and probably drank too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched over to wine and became a passion and a hobby, and actually started that because of a friend of mine that lived out near Napa and encouraged me to come out and my wife to come out, so we went out and did it. In fact, that story will be in my newest book I'm writing right now called Wine Stories, both lived and learned. So
now, one of your other one, you had the Whiskey Club.
Yes.
But did you also have the like a whiskey story show? Because that one's kind of similar.
I purposely made the covers very similar. So this one is the first one, Tasting 501 at the Century Bar, Whiskey and History. And the reason why I have the E in whiskey in parentheses is because some countries use the E and some don't. And the way you can figure it out is in the name of the country. If it has an E, it'll have an E in whiskey. And if it doesn't have an E, it won't.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Or if you're a bad speller like me, it'll be either way.
Yeah.
So just so you guys don't know, in case you're not from Ohio or Dayton, Ohio, the Century Bar is a local bourbon bar.
Yes.
It's been growing over the years. Popularity they have, I don't know how many.
Yeah, it's very famous.
Clearly, as many as you've tasted at least.
Yes.
But it's a popular bourbon bar down here, very upscale. So that's where you got to get that. So now, how did that work? Did you go there and one night just say load me up, or
I'll drink 100 tonight? No, actually, as it says on the cover, it's actually a 5-year whiskey journey. And what I did is I would go to the Century Bar and I would taste them, and I'd get like a 1 or 2 ounce pour, and I would probably have 5 in an evening, and I would write my notes of what I tasted, and I would also then, if I didn't already know the backstory, I would look up the backstory. So over the 5 years, I compiled 501 different whiskeys. I decided to put my tasting notes in here and tell people what I thought was the best of all those in the different categories. And just real quick, if you take a look inside my book, which you can't right now, I start off with drinking, sipping, or tasting. and they're different. Drinking is for celebrations. Drinking is for parties. Drinking has a wonderful place in life. Sipping is sitting in the backyard on a sunny day. You just finished your yard work. You might have a cold beer. I'll have a nice whiskey on ice. Tasting is what I did at the Century Bar. Tasting is when you're trying to figure out every note, every taste, write it down, understand the whiskey inside and out. So just a quick one. I mean, right now I'm drinking a wheated whiskey, Larceny, and when you taste it, you can tell that the whiskey is a softer whiskey, a little sweeter, and it's going to be a bourbon that has the flavoring grain is wheat rather than rye, because it doesn't have that harshness or spice of the rye. So anyway, that's
I feel like I've been drinking whiskey wrong my whole life.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing too. A lot of people will grab a glass of whiskey and they'll want to nose it first or smell it first, and they'll stick their nose right in it. That's the worst thing you can do because it shuts everything down.
I think people know that from wine, because wine people tend to move it around and smell. So they probably assume like anytime you're tasting on any kind of
just
drink,
do it.
But this actually will harm it because
harm it.
Your smell also adds in with your taste and can actually change.
It'll shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you do it is you just bring it up and you breathe through your mouth. And then you eventually get your nose in there and smell it, and then you taste it and you go from there. My second book is I have a whiskey club, and it's a whiskey club tastings. Started in 2010, and I actually started it because I wanted to not have my sons-in-law have the early experience of whiskey that I had.
Mm-hmm.
To better yet have a whiskey experience where they learn to taste and enjoy. So we always have a meal, we always taste, we talk about the history, we talk about the taste. When we're done, most of the time we'll have a cigar with it and just enjoy and relax and talk.
And just so you know, that does make you a cool dad. The cool dad. I grew up in a Pentecostal. There was no bourbons at our dinner table.
Thank you. So one of the things I did at all the tastings is I write a little kind of, I don't know, a toast to start. I'm going to read a couple.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, please.
So when I was a young guy, one of my bourbons that I liked was Rebel Yell. So I put a toast to Rebel Yell. And it goes like this. I rode with Jeb Stewart on horseback and with Elvis in his pink Cadillac. Born south of the Mason-Dixon line, oh, what a stately home to call mine. Excitement and splendor often comes through me in dreams of heroics and celebrity. But friends I make that will always be together in thought and reality. So who am I to live so well? I'm a shot from a bottle of Rebel Yell.
Wow, and you wrote that.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like I should I actually have a like a little thing in here where I could like do clapping and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't think I need it, but I should have. Okay, actually, hold on just a second. I'm going to turn down the I think I have this microphone. I keep seeing a lot of red. I think I'm laughing.
Okay.
I think I'm laughing too loud.
Oh, that's all right.
Anybody who knows me knows I have a very hearty laugh. But yeah, so I was
that's a great one. It really is. And I don't want to bore people with this, but here's another one. The early bourbon distillers. The men, the myth, the legends who brought us bourbon, a gift from heaven. Evan Williams was Kentucky's first according to lore. But withstanding the credit given, there were several with and before. Elijah Craig accidentally improved the taste as the first to use charred oak barrels, thus creating modern bourbon, earning the father of bourbon herald. And anyway, I go and I talk about others in there. And the one that I really want to share with you is we celebrate certain events like, I don't know if there's a holiday, an Irish holiday, of course we know what that is. We celebrate St. Patty's Day. We also try to celebrate and have correct whiskeys to go along with Scotland's poet, Robert Burns. So I took my hand at a little Burns type thing here. And it says, to drink a dram is the call, though too many or a bar stool ye fall. trying so manly to be ramrod tall, ne'er a cross word or to a brawl. Best we calmly pose, as if an artist to draw, have a dram of good cheer. Not thinking of from grain to glass, rather looking at a fine young lass. With thoughts of us lustful past, when just a glance became an ask, and rugged handsome was your mask. Have another dram of good cheer. Yet older ye sit glass in hand, again the up-tempo from the band. Your feet somehow light as feathered fan, and yet ye face be red and tan. For are ye yet still the man? Have several more drams of good cheer. In a second, the glimmer in a flash, as lights go on to end the nash. Ye have consumed a wealth of mash, oft to sober with eggs and hash. Though older now, it was quite a bash.
Okay, I'm just going to go out and say it. It's worth buying the books just for the poetry. I mean, if you're not a bourbon person or a whiskey person, the poetry alone, that's really well done. Now, do you have, I mean, obviously you're an author, you wrote this.
Yes.
Do you have any, like, background? Did you used to do poetry, or?
Actually, when I finished my degrees I have to have for what I do for a living, I went back and I went to Sinclair Community College, and I took some courses and got some associate degrees in things I wanted to learn.
Right.
So I did history, and I did one in literature and writing. And it was just opened up a world for me.
That's
really
amazing.
did.
That's really good. Matter of fact, if we ever do pair up for a book sign, or even if you do your own, that'd be a great way to kind of just get because it appeals to everybody. The whiskey for the guys and or gals drink whiskey too, and the poetry. For anybody that may not be into whiskey but loves poetry, you got that's really good combination. I like how you did that because a lot of times people I haven't read a lot of books where people have just done tastings, but I would imagine a lot of it is more like more of a dictionary, encyclopedia type, where they have a picture and a definition of the ingredients and maybe their review.
Yes.
I love the fact that with it you kind of paired it with a poem, almost like you would a cigar. Because as everybody, people that know me know, I do the cigars. I do the bourbon. I call it bourbon cigars every Wednesday, where I buy new bourbon and I try it out, and so it's I do it more for the experience than I do for that. So it's really neat how you pair that with poetry.
Thank you.
It's real impressive.
I write my books to try to be like we were sitting here talking to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And my book that I wanted to bring, but it's not out yet, is a nice little book, and it's sayings of my father.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 57 sayings that he said and stories to go with them. And it's pretty interesting. But the one I'm writing right now is probably going to be believe it or not, my favorite. It's Wine Stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about how I was in different places and had funny things happen. Like at one time in the country of Chile, my wife and I were on a private tour of wineries. And we had a break. Mm-hmm. And so we went to the local restaurant, an Italian restaurant in Chile.
Okay.
Had the best Italian food, and I've been to Italy, best Italian food ever, a place called Fellini's in Vigna del Mar. Anyway, so we're there, and nobody spoke English, and I couldn't order what I wanted. And a guy comes over to the table, and he says, hello, my friend. I said, well, hello. I don't know this guy from Adam,
right.
But he knows me,
right.
I think. As it ended up, he was a KGB former agent that, when the Soviet Union broke up, he moved there. And he thought I was a CIA agent. So it was hilarious. And he sent over a bottle of champagne to the table. So it all worked out.
The more you deny it, the more they believe
Absolutely.
You are. I went with a friend once, and I used to be in the Marines, and we went out drinking once, and this guy thought we were Navy SEALs. And I kept telling them, no, we're not.
Hey.
But the more we denied it, the more they thought we were still like, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I even had a girl think I was a lead singer of a band at one of the bars there. And the more I told her I was not that lead singer, the more she thought I was just trying to be nonchalant. So that's pretty good. At least you got a free drink out of the champagne.
Absolutely. I got a whole nice bottle of sparkling wine.
So are you doing anything different with, here you have the poetry?
Yes.
You have the Saying Your Fathers.
Yes.
The wine, what are you doing with that?
The wine is going to be basically telling folks how I started into that, and then telling stories along the way. So I'll probably end up with close to 60 stories, like the time I met Hans Cornell the second time.
Okay.
He's a famous champagne guy who came from Germany, penniless.
Oh, wow.
Ended up in Napa, Sonoma after hitchhiking from New York.
Okay.
He gets there, so Debbie and I, my wife and I, go and we visit with him. We do the tour. He liked us. We taste. We do all this. So we promise ourselves we'll go back again. We do, but it's not the Hans Cornell Winery anymore. It's the Frank family. So we found out that in 1990 it sold it, so these people bought it. And so anyway, we're talking to them. We're telling them the story. We're down in the lower level with all the candle lit stuff, and we're going to taste some of the wines. And all of a sudden the candles just flicker like crazy. And they said, oh, that was Hans coming through.
Really?
He had passed away.
Wow.
Now, I know it sounds weird, but it happened. And they said, he must really like you and your wife, because if he comes through and he doesn't like, he blows them out. And if they flicker a lot and don't go out, he likes you a lot. So that was pretty cool. The second time I met Hans.
I think you're probably good to go check it out just because it has the candles there.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty good.
But I have been fortunate enough. My hobby and where I worked, I could travel internationally and stuff, and all over the U.S.
You were CIA.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how you would think that. Talking about your exploits around the world, like, are you a travel agent or? So
I've been able to go to 867 wineries around the world, and I've been to 248 distilleries. And at one time I was in what's called the New York City Wine Century Club, and you taste different grape varieties. It's a global club, and I made it to one of the top 3 in there in terms of different grapes. I tasted 498 different grape varieties in wine.
Wow.
And so that helped my palate when I got into whiskey. And then COVID helped my palate, so it doesn't work very well with anything.
Right. And you really start like, now I see what I'm not tasting
Yes.
in these drinks. Wow, that's pretty impressive. So you already have a third one that's out.
It's out.
He's not with you, and that's the wine one?
The third one that's out is Sayings of My Father.
Sayings of My Father, but the one you're working on...
The one I'm working on right now will probably be out about mid-year, and it's Wine Country Stories, both lived and learned.
Nice. And these are available on Amazon.
Yes.
Now, do you sell them like yourself, like when you're out and about, or
when I do a signing or something, or I always have some with me.
Okay.
My wife is amazed. I'll strike up conversations when when we travel. I always, and you have to understand, my wife's a saint because she drinks very little. She drinks wine. She drinks some beer. She doesn't drink this at all. But I always go to bourbon bars or famous bars when we travel. We'll go around. And try to visit wineries, distilleries, and that sort of thing. But while we're there and we taste, it's she just goes along with it, and I'll strike up conversation with the bartender or whatever, and they might say something, you know a fair amount about this, and so Debbie says, well, he's written a couple books, so then they'll ask about them, they'll look up Amazon, look at them, and I have probably sold 50 to 60 books just through casual conversation like that.
Now, here's an idea as far as like for book signings, like doing book signings at these. Have you done a book signing like at the Century Bar or anything? Because I mean, I
haven't.
That seems like that would make a great pairing for any kind of bar that wants to, promote that they know their stuff about bourbons.
Absolutely.
To have an author there, on a night, say, hey, we're gonna have such and such here. As an author, I'm always looking for different ways to do signings. That seems like a great pairing.
Absolutely. So I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of the master distillers and stuff along the way, and attend a lot of events. Used to meet a lot of the winemakers and stuff, and owners. One of them that I met that I always wanted to meet was B.R. Cohn. a wine guy.
Yeah, I've never heard of him, but
Well, a quick story.
I'm very good at pretending like, oh yeah, right. But I'm like,
A quick
fake it
story?
till you make it, right?
A quick story about B.R. Cohn. B.R. Cohn was a young man, and he was into olive oil and wine, but he was managing a rehearsal studio in L.A. So he decided that he would discover a band. So he found one, actually a biker bar band, and he started being their manager, promoted them. They became successful. He would get away from their tours and go up to Sonoma and kind of rest on this property up there. He eventually bought the property. It had some olive trees on it. So then he started his winery there, B.R. Cohn Winery. It's fantastic. And then he started olive pressing, which is what he always wanted to do.
Wow.
Okay? And the group that fueled all this money is the Doobie Brothers.
The Doobie Brothers. Okay, I do know them.
Yes.
I do know them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So I
impressive.
got to talk to him, and it was while he was releasing his Doobie Brothers Red annual release to help with charities, which is pretty admirable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
But wine's got my heart, but whiskey is still my passion and my go-to. My go-to for relaxation, for camaraderie with friends, and for a cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why I collect them and keep them here. So when I go to the bourbon and cigar once a week, the idea is I share it with everybody, and then whatever was left over goes to my collection. But I ideally have it too. When friends come over, I have cigars here and I have bourbon here. So it's just great to sit out, a great pairing together, and just kind of catch up and stuff. It just kind of really, just there's something nice about that. Like I like going to vineyards because more of the atmosphere. You go out there, they're usually out have open fields.
Yes.
They're great for summer because you go over and just kind of look over the fields of grapes, and there's just a relaxed environment.
Nice.
Bourbon, just really, there's a good community of bourbon drinkers out there, and a lot of them do revolve around that and cigars, so it's like a good pairing in that sense.
Great pairing. Right
and then that's how we met, as a matter of fact, because I go on the Wednesdays and I met him at Beckel Cigar Shop, which was my last show. I interviewed Megan from Beckel's, and they have a copy of your book there and stuff, and we had talked there too. So I mean, it's just a very good, and that environment's always great too. Whenever you pair bourbon and whiskey, and share it with friends. So what's on the road for you next? I know you got the new book coming out.
Got the new book that I'm going to be promoting quite a bit, and then the one I'm writing, and then of course at my work we're extremely busy, so that takes a lot of time. But probably going to hit some special distilleries.
Okay.
I've got a list. I want to make a trip through Memphis and get to Old Glory down there. I'd like to get out to the West Coast again and do some up near Woodinville in Northern California. So Park City, Utah. I've not done the distillery there, but I've done distilleries and wineries, golly sakes, in Chile and Germany and Italy and Canada and the Caribbean. Oh my goodness, the rums. Now
I have gotten to rums. I'm just now starting to get into tequila.
Yeah.
That's the next thing I'm kind of starting to, because I didn't realize tequila was so expanse too. I was like, oh, tequila. You got 1800, you got Patron, but kind of find out there's quite a bit. There's a bar Granada downtown. That's a tequila bar.
yes.
And I was very surprised at the amount of tequilas available.
It's so popular now. Even Tim Smith, I saw in Moonshiners last night. He's going to try to come up with some.
Really, yeah. It's and Dayton's always it's a great place for like this sort of stuff. Ohio's great for breweries, vineyards. I mean, you just Google vineyards in Ohio. We got so many.
Did you know that pre-Civil War, Ohio was the #1 wine state in the nation?
No, I did not, but that's
Yes.
pretty impressive.
And one of the guys that was a real hero of that's Nicholas Longworth, down along the Ohio River. He used a native grape called Catawba. He made a sparkling wine. He entered it over in Paris, and it was 1906, I believe. He won best sparkling wine against all the French and everything.
Huh.
And it was a sweeter, because back then the champagnes were sweeter. The Brute, that came later.
Right.
So then we fast forward to the year 2000, and they had the international contest for the best sparkling wine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different categories from dry to sweet, and the driest is called Brut Sauvage.
Huh.
And Brut Sauvage doesn't have any dosage at the end with the sugar and stuff to get that next fermentation and taste. And the winner was Ravenhurst up near Columbus, Ohio.
Very impressive.
Very
impressive. Yes.
And they came in number 2 overall behind Taittinger. And when the guy brought out the thing, I talked to Chuck Harris, who owns that facility. They brought out the announcement, and all these champagnes in the top 10 and sparkling wines were $250, $300, and his was $25.
Huh.
And the guy said, Chuck, I said, I'm sorry, I think when we printed this, we misplaced the decimal point. He said, no. He said, I'm the idiot that misplaced the decimal point.
Makes sense. But honestly, some of my favorite bourbons
Yes.
have all been like around the $25, $35 ones. And sometimes because when I go buy the bourbons, they don't always have the price on them.
That's right.
I just find one that I like. And just so you know what kind of connoisseur I am, I usually get the prettiest bottle. So I like look around for interesting looking bottles.
So you like Bibb and Tucker?
I do have Bibb and Tucker
There
over
you
there.
are.
Yeah, it's a
There
pretty
you
cool
are.
one. But
Yeah.
even like Old Soldier has a little tin on there with a
yes.
3-dimensional. And Angel's Envy's got the angel wings on there.
Yes.
I really look for anything that's distinct. I'm more of like into art than I am necessarily into brands. So to me, that's what kind of draws me to that. But yeah, some of the ones that I like. And I categorize it because I'm not nearly as fast as you. But I categorize mine into 3 categories. I have ones I can drink neat.
Yes.
Ones that I have to have on the rocks.
Yes.
And the ones that I mix with Coke. They're just like the blandest. I'm like, this doesn't taste anything to me. It's so mild. It's like I got to add Coke so I can have some flavor to it.
Absolutely.
But like you had mentioned, where you have sipping wines and drinking wines.
Yes.
I guess that would be my categories. I have some wines I just like to sip on that are neat.
Yep.
Something I'm going to be there for a while. Add some ice.
Some whiskeys that
Yep.
neat, some
And
with
then
ice.
What the Coke would be like the drinking. It would be pretty much just,
Yes.
I'm just there to have a good time and drink the bourbons. Now let's talk some favorites, okay?
Sure.
Before we move over to the short story, let's move over to talking about
Yeah.
favorites. Favorite whiskey. Do you have one?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could only have one, I'm on a desert island, I'll take Booker's.
Booker's.
Booker's bourbon.
Okay.
It's
Where
about
are they out of? Are
120.
they out of Kentucky?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a bean product.
All right.
And it's named for Booker Noe, who was the seventh generation. So many beams. And originally it was Boehm instead of Beam. But they're on their 8th generation, I think, now with Freddie Noe, Fred Noe's son. So that would make him 7th. So Booker would have been number 6, I guess. I could be wrong on that. But at any rate, when you have a whole line,
Hope you guys are taking notes.
a whole line of beams like that running that distillery, you can understand why their slogan is "Let's stay on the beam."
Right. That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. Now, favorite play. Now, say obviously they've got Century Bar down here.
Yeah.
But I don't even know how to phrase this question. I'm kind of doing phrase. You have the favorite bourbon, but maybe favorite. Not just here in Dayton, but say favorite whiskey place around the world that you've been to, like had environment, collection.
Bon Accord in Glasgow, Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
Now they call theirs. Now they have a different name, don't they, for the bourbon, for the whiskey?
Well, theirs is all Scotch whiskey because it has to be made
Scotch.
in Scotland.
That's it.
Has to be made in Scotland. And I was fortunate enough to go over there and tour some lowland, a couple highland distilleries, and then every distillery on Isla. That's where you get the real peaty stuff. And I still like that. In fact, in the middle of the winter, when I go outside and I have an outdoor fireplace and it's really cold, I'll normally take a Lafroig or a Lagavulin or an Ardbeg because they have a lot of phenol. And that gives it the peat and peaty taste. And I swear to you, I'm not lying, you could put a glass of that on the table and just the smell of it, will, because it smells like a campfire or a peat fire, just the smell of it will make you feel warmer.
Huh. Wow.
It's amazing.
That does sound pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Can you buy that?
You can buy it. You can get it at any of the whiskey stores, you can get those. Probably my favorite whiskey tour, though, would have been to Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I did a cultural, scenic, and historic tour of Ireland, and my mother was Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm half Irish, and loved to see the old sod,
Mm-hmm.
and got to go to County Limerick, which was the Fitzgerald County. They were given that county. Gerald, my ancestor, was with William the Conqueror.
Huh.
And he was given land in Wales, and he couldn't conquer it, so then he was resettled in Limerick and said he could have all of Limerick if he could take it. Well, the old Colleens owned it. They were the ones. That was in the 1100s. By 1300, they ran them out, and I feel bad because Colleen is Michael Collins, who was one of the two guys who got Ireland their independence in 1916, 1921. Yeah.
Well, now you know the truth.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a history nut too.
Yeah, I can tell. I love that. I love that. I kind of I purposely don't do like nonfiction because I'm just so bad with dates and names and stuff. But I love it when other people like can recite that. To me, that's like one of the the coolest thing. So people just kind of recite dates and their names and events, and I'm like I just soak it all in because to me that's just
it's fun.
That's phenomenal. And I think what probably helps is because you've actually like traveled as opposed to just reading out a book. You've actually traveled and heard the stories firsthand or seen the places where they took place. I think that really probably helps with that. Now going forward, I know it's like bourbon and cigars, and we're going to move on in a second, but as kind of like growth, what would you like to see, like even just locally, as far as when it comes to bourbon? Like, what would you kind of see as far as maybe events or tastings or environment-wise? Like, what do you see like in other countries and other places you've been to that you would like to see like come to Dayton?
Okay. I could take you to different places. The first thing that came to mind would be Munich for beer.
Mm-hmm.
And all the majors have their own beer halls there. And it's a celebration, and they have the Oktoberfest. It's fantastic. Of course, we have that in Kentucky. We have the Bourbon Affair and other things like that. But if you want to see, if you really want to see how a community could get involved in that kind of stuff and grow it, go to northern Kentucky, Covington area and around there, and look up on the internet the Bee Line. B as in Bob.
Okay.
The Bee Line. And you'll see all the places where you can stop and get food, taste. I think there's 4 distilleries on the Bee Line. It's close to where we are. I highly recommend people do that. And I've done all of them, and it's great. My wife will go too because we always stop and have a great meal, and normally shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the way to do it. In this particular area where we are now, I would say probably the best step forward would be to continue down the line with the different breweries.
Yeah.
And do the Warped Wing thing like they opened up in Springboro and that sort of thing. And have events around that. There's a lot of wineries still in Ohio, over 100. So there's plenty to visit. Distilleries, there's plenty. And in fact, I'll tell you what, if you ever want to see a colonial distillery, go to Indian Creek in New Carlisle.
Huh? Indian Creek.
They have the old 1800 copper stills, and they have them bricked in like you would find at George Washington's Mount Vernon distillery. And he makes rye whiskey, and when he first made it, started making it, it was rye whiskey.
Wow.
But it wasn't great rye whiskey.
All right, guys, message me if you want to get together a group and
go there.
And go there. New Carlisle, people, come out like 20 minutes away.
And now
Let's do it.
Phenomenal whiskeys, and he's also a cigar nut. And they have a farm there that his wife their family's had for generations, and he does a very nice job. And it's a beautiful, beautiful colonial type place to see. You're not going to see one of these massive places. You're going to see a craft distiller.
That's one thing I always liked about the Jack Daniels. Back in the 90s, I was real big into Jack Daniels. Yes. And down in Tennessee, going down there, because, you have just the open country, they had a barn, they had the statues, and it was it was more of an experience than it was anything else, which was nice. All right, so I'll have a link to his books in the description below. They're available on Amazon. Any final words before we go on to reading my story?
Real quick.
Yes.
Because you mentioned Jack Daniels.
Yes.
If you're there, go 15 miles away from there and go to George Dickel. And it's in Tullahoma, in the Cascade Valley, it's called, or Cascade whatever area. And when you go up to the distillery, really note the bust of George Dickel on a brick pedestal. It's like 3 times the size, but it has a quote underneath it. And if I recall the quote correctly, it goes something like this: "I'm not the prettiest flower in the garden, but with enough of my product, the ladies think I look very fine."
From a poet, it's got to be good. That's pretty impressive. And I would definitely recommend it. If you're just getting into whiskey, definitely take a look at the book. I mean, if you're into poetry, get into the book. Very impressive. I'll be adding a couple. I have like a shelf just of like local authors and smaller authors that I like to collect and just have my own. I'm a very niche person. All my paintings, these are all local. I like collecting, other authors' books and stuff because to me they're just so much more into them. A lot more love and passion went into them. I'm not taking away from like bigger authors or anything, but I have a feeling that when you do like 60, 80 books, and you've been doing it for decades, you kind of lose the first book, like Stephen King's first one was The Carrie, and from now, didn't even know his last book is, at this point.
I don't.
So I love like authors that are smaller that they put their love and passion in the book. So definitely, and go check these out. Like I said, I'll have them in the description below. But they're available on Amazon. If you want to get into whiskey, it's a great opportunity to kind of like to look for. I know that's what I'm going to be looking at them. It's kind of I drink the whiskeys, but I don't know enough about what to look for when I drink them. To me, it's more of a experience, time to spend with friends than it is.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be nice to be able to don't smell it, keep your mouth open and inhale with the mouth, but
and the books
enjoy
are really
them.
good too because you can do your tasting, write down a couple notes, and then you can take a look in the book and say, okay, this is what Fred thought. He's full of crap.
Right.
Right.
I'll try to have as like a way to get a hold of him too, so you can make sure you let him know that too. Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
you're way up on that. All right, well, Fred, you ready to get into the story?
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna cut to a quick. I say commercial, but really it's just my commercial for my book. But that way we can kind of get set up for the story. You're going to narrate. I'm going to do the voices. And then as soon as we get done with the short story, we're going to move into some bourbon tasting. So enjoy my little self-made trailer here. All right, so we're back. Fred's going to do the narration. I'm going to do the voices. I like this story. This is, I try to remember. It's been years now since I've written some of these, and I try to remember what I was thinking when it kind of inspired me to write some of these short stories. I'm already hitting 75 short stories now.
That's awesome.
So it starts to blend in. It's like what it was. But one thing that stands out for me, honestly, is the cover. If you take a look at the bottom corner there, you can kind of see the cover that I made for it. I design my own covers. When you're a small time author, you kind of have to do everything yourself.
I do too.
But I like that so much because I was playing around with two-tone and masks and things like that. This is actually going to be the cover. Obviously, I took away the name of the story and stuff. Just have the door in there. But this is actually the cover by Volume 3 coming out. My third book of short stories. I'm using this as the cover. I just liked it so much. It's black and white. I took away, cleaned it up a little bit as far as taking away the name of the story stuff. But my favorite part of this story is actually the cover. This is one that I think that people should definitely judge a book by its cover. And I think this is actually one of my most listened to podcasts, and I have a feeling that mainly it's because of the cover that I made for this one. So that's probably that. And I don't know like what inspired me to write the story, but when I think of this particular story, I think about the cover that I made for it. So it's a little backstory for you.
And I'll tell you, when I met Antonio at Beckles, I was thinking, as I met him and talked to him, of the Dos Equis commercials.
Not the most interesting man?
Yeah, because the guy is very interesting. Okay. So.
I have a lot of variety. Anybody that knows me, like, I'm just all over the place. It could be interesting. It could be ADHD. It could be. I haven't been diagnosed for anything, but so I'm just kind of playing it off as interesting.
Okay.
All right, are they ready? Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. Fred took in a deep breath of fresh air and looked off the cliff of the large hill he had ascended to reach that point. This point, excuse me.
Oh, I'm not going to correct you.
No.
You go ahead, Joy.
He enjoyed hiking and was glad spring was finally peeking its head out. He took off his pack and pulled out his lunch.
Wow, what a great view to have lunch to.
He thought, wearing a broad smile. Once he finished, he began to trek back down the wooded hill to where his car was parked. When he was about halfway down the long hill, a strange sight caught his attention in his peripheral. He dropped his walking stick, but quickly grabbed it again as he stood there paralyzed with astonishment. To his side stood a door, unattached from any structure. Fred quickly looked around, hoping to see another person who could reassure him that there was, in fact, a door standing upright in the woods, attached to nothing. Unfortunately, he was alone.
I'm missing a W. That's where
okay,
hence the confusion.
So, as he was forced to examine the door himself and hope that he wasn't losing his mind, he started with a wide circle around it, expecting to find some kind of camouflage, but there wasn't any. There was just the door, standing upright by itself. Once he felt a little more acclimated, he closed his distance to it, cautiously searching the ground in front of him for any booby traps. He wasn't by any means a trapper or a survivalist, but he was an intelligent, cautious man. The wood felt real when he was finally within reach to touch it. Now that he had confirmed its existence and that he was not hallucinating, he quickly began to examine it. To his surprise, the door was not mounted in the ground. There was no visible reason why it didn't fall over when he pushed on it.
I just gotta say, the voice that he's using right now, I feel like I'm watching a documentary on Netflix. Like, I feel like this is history. Like, are you sure this is fiction? Because I feel like he's narrating like an actual event during the Civil War. You have a very booming voice. I love it.
Thank you.
It must be mounted with spikes underneath.
He thought. It looked like it hovered above the ground instead of resting on it. Another oddity of the door was that the doorknob was on the left side of the door, regardless of which side he stood on. That's crazy. He was able to reason that they weren't functional, but were partially mounted to look like they were working doorknobs. He turned one of them and slowly pushed the door open away from him. As it only seemed to open one way, his legs almost gave out from underneath at the sight that awaited him when he opened the door. Through the door was the woods, as expected, behind it, with one major difference. It was night. He quickly looked behind the door to verify that it was still day around the door, and being satisfied, looked back through the door at the nightly reflection. He closed the door and walked to the other side. Once again, he opened the door, which only opened away from him, and was greeted by the same view of the woods behind the door, but in the darkness of night.
Now, don't be crazy. Go get the authorities and let them deal with it.
He thought, but something inside him told him the door would not be there when he returned. Though cautious, he was a curious man, so he decided to venture through the door and take a peek. Fred stuck his head through first to check what he could see from the door. He scanned the area, but saw nothing that seemed overly threatening.
I think we'll all be safe enough to kind of stick our head or hand through if I saw a door. And I'd be afraid of it closing and missing half my body. So
Yeah, me too. It didn't come back.
It doesn't come back, yeah.
So, with no immediate threat in sight, he slowly stepped away, turning to make sure the door was still there. He let out a sigh of relief when he saw that it was. He laid his pack down by the door. He wanted to have it in case of an emergency, but didn't want to carry it with him. He also knew that if he had to make a quick getaway, he could easily grab the pack as he ran back through the door. Fred felt a little off balance, stepping from day to night. Looking back through the door, where it was sunny, didn't help. He walked in, an ever-growing circle around the door until he felt sure enough to start investigating the area. Except for it now being night, he didn't see anything different to this side of the door. He knew that it must be getting dark on the other side of the door he had come from, so he walked back to see. He saw that it was indeed growing darker on the other side of the door, and instinctively he looked up to the sky, where he was expecting it to start giving away to its own morning, but instead it stayed dark until it matched the darkness of night on the other side of the door. Fred was no botanist, but he was sure that plants needed sunlight to thrive. But minus the sun, the plants and trees on this side of the door seemed to mirror the ones on the other side. Slightly confused, he decided to continue his investigation when he heard a rustle. He took cover by a tree, trying to locate where the sound had come from. It seemed to be coming from all around him, so he kept glancing at all directions, determined not to let anything sneak up on him. All of a sudden, the tree he had been pressed against moved.
It's like I forgot what happens in the story, so I'm like, what?
At this point, I would be a sergeant.
Yeah.
I would have stripes on my shorts.
Right. It's like, I feel like I'm listening to it. I'm like, wow, what happens next? I don't remember this. It was like 3 years ago.
Here. Yeah. All of a sudden, the tree, he had pressed against moved. It looked like it was trying to turn around to see what was touching it. Fred stepped backwards slowly. When he tripped on a branch and fell backward, he lost his footing and soon found himself rolling uncontrollably down a hill. His roll ended with a splash as he rolled into a shallow creek.
Huh. Wow. I wonder if we come back to the tree. I don't remember if I ever extend past the tree, move slightly.
Oh man, I like it though. A part of him wanted to stay partially unconscious, but the survival instinct within him jolted him awake, and he quickly looked around expecting to see a tree standing over him. Instead, he found himself alone, or so he thought, until he heard a rustle coming from within the tree line. He wrongly assumed it was the trees, and the proof came in the form of a childlike being with pointy ears. Fred stood frozen as the elfin creature approached him. They stood there studying each other, when another, louder noise broke both their stares. The elf began to quickly walk away, clearly frightened by the sound, but stopped and turned towards Fred. They looked back and forth between where the sound had come from and where Fred was still standing in the shallow creek. It was clearly deciding if it should help Fred or not. Deciding to help, it motioned Fred to follow, which when the loud sound came again, he quickly began following the elf. The elf led Fred to a hole under a fallen log, and there they shared a small confined space. He was able to see more details of the elf. It was actually a she, and though she had the appearance of a child, certain minute details led him to believe that she was much older. She glanced at him, and seeing him staring at her, gestured for him to look out and see what was coming. From the tree line emerged a tiger, the size of a giant boulder.
I don't know what I was smoking or drinking when I wrote this. Maybe I just got done watching the Lord of the Rings or something.
I like it. It walked past them, stopping only to sniff where Fred had landed in the creek, looked around, and then continued walking away. Once the elfin girl was sure the giant tiger was far enough away, she squirmed out of their hole and began running back into the forest. Fred was torn between going back to the door and following her. He was afraid of being trapped in his alternate version of the woods, but he was also a very curious person. And he feared even more that he would not be able to return to the place once he had left it. He quickly made up his mind and ran after her. While they ran through the woods, he noticed more of the trees, moving on their own, and the ones that were facing him had faces. Their looks seemed more of curiosity than threatening. After that felt like an hour of quickly walking through the woods, the elfin girl dropped out of sight over a berm. Fred quickly followed her, but losing his footing, once again found himself falling down a steep ravine and having the air knocked out of him.
He's apparently as clumsy as he is curious.
Absolutely. He's down to the count. We'll see. So, when he opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by more elves looking down at him with curious eyes. When he sat up, they all backed up, and then some of them began talking to each other. He didn't recognize the language.
Hi?
He said. Then he spoke. When he spoke, they all went quiet, and then suddenly started laughing. Their laugh was infectious, and he began laughing too. Before they could fully enjoy the moment, another little elf ran into the room and began creating a commotion. A group conversation back and forth, and then they rushed outside a passageway. Fred was unsure what to do next when he felt something touch his hand. He looked and saw that the elfin girl, who had led him there, had taken his hand in hers and was looking at him with a pleading look. He may not have been able to understand their language, but he knew when someone needed his help. So he gave her a reassuring smile, which was returned, and she led him after the others. When they arrived above ground, where the others had gone, he found himself facing a small group of dwarfs who stood in taller than the elves, but shorter than Fred. When Fred appeared, all the dwarfs stopped what they were doing and stared at him. The lead elf turned to see what had their attention, smiled, and then turned back to the dwarfs. He began telling them something Fred couldn't understand. The dwarfs kept switching gazes from the elves to Fred and then back again. They seemed to be weighing their options. He got the impression that the dwarfs were used to getting their way, but didn't seem to know what to do with somebody taller than them. Reluctantly, the lead dwarf gave out a grunt, and he and his men slowly began to walk away. Once they were out of sight, the elves began to jump up and down, celebrating. Fred looked down at the elfin girl to see her smiling back up at him. They led Fred back into the underground lair. They led Fred back into the underground lair, where they continued their celebration by presenting Fred with a magnificent feast, apparently in his honor. Though he had no idea what they were saying, he enjoyed watching them talk to each other, and from time to time, one of them would make eye contact with him and raise their glass, which he always returned, as would I.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if they didn't raise it first, I'm going to. Anyway, outside came a loud sound of a horn being blown. All the elves looked at Fred, and seeing the elfin girl grab his hand and try to pull him away, they all began to argue. Fred thought that the dwarfs had come back, and they wanted him to face them again. But if that was the case, Fred didn't understand why they would be trying to keep her from leading him outside. The elfin girl argued with the others and seemed to convince them. Seeing them settle down, she turned back and once again grabbed Fred's hand. She began to pull him with desperate strength. Fred didn't understand what was going on, but he had come to trust the elfin girl and allowed her to lead him away. She half dragged him out of the lair, back through the woods from where he had originally come from. As they picked up the pace, Fred began to realize that she was taking him back to the door. He also surmised that because she was in such a hurry, that the horn being blown must have something to do with it. They arrived at the door, and he began to panic when he saw that door was becoming translucent. He was about to run through the door when the elfin girl held him back. He looked at her to see what was wrong, and saw that she was trying to give him something. She opened her hand to reveal a glowing key. Seeing that and saw it, he nudged her head toward the door to inform. She nudged her head toward the door to inform what it was there for. She dropped the key in his hand, gave him a sad look of loss, and then ran back the way they had come. The horn blowing again broke his trance, and grabbing his backpack as he went, he ran through the door. Once he was safe on the other side, he turned to see that the door was almost completely invisible. Through the door came a distant sound of the horn blowing a third time, and with that the door disappeared. He looked down at the key and saw it glowing. When the door was completely gone, the glow faded, and it appeared an old but normal key.
Oh, my turn. I was enjoying the story. The key must be used to open the door again.
Fred thought. Every weekend, Fred returned to where the door had been, but found the place empty. A year passed, and he was losing hope when he arrived once again to where he had first found the door, but found it still gone. He was about to walk away when he saw a light coming from his hand. The key was starting to glow. He looked up and saw the door reappear. As before, he didn't need a key to open it. On the other side in the darkness stood a group of elves waiting for him, each holding a gift to give to their lost friend.
Hello, my friends.
He said as he walked through the door in the woods once more.
Beautiful. I tell you something. One thing I've learned that for being a writer is that a lot of authors don't read their own work. I very rarely go back and read my stories. My first novel, Sins of the Father, which I have right there.
Yes.
I wrote, published. It took me 10 years to write. Published in 2015, and I really just wanted to get it done. I wanted to get it published, so I just went through it and as fast as I could to the editing process to get it out there, and. Because I just wanted to get it published. And sometimes, every once in a while, I go back and I read it. I'm like, holy shit, this is a really good story.
It's really good.
It's like, so I feel like it's good when, you like your own story. So I'm, following along with this. I'm like, man, I really like this. Now, obviously, as a writer, you're, looking at your own things I say the door a lot, and I don't use enough of, I'm using my pronouns too much. But at the same time, I'm like, man, this is a really good story.
I thought that was a great story. I loved it.
And I think I was just bragging about how much I just like the cover of it. All my short stories, by the way, one is available in Short Stories from the Mind of a Madman. This one's still in volume 1. But I'm actually going to be going through and expanding all these. So my idea is to turn all my short stories into novellas, taken from the short 2,000 words to 20,000 words. So as I'm reading these stories, I'm like, man, I was like, what can I add to this that can make it more, obviously more with the elves and the trees, and maybe give a little bit more... something more for them to do than just have a celebration. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. Thank you for helping me read that.
Well, thank you.
I was like, man, I'm following along, like, man, this is actually pretty good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a short break real quick. Just gonna play another one of my trailers because you don't promote. Authors got to promote themselves. No one's doing it for me. But in the meantime, we're going to be setting up these bourbon tastings. We're going to set the bottles here, and then we're going to see. I got my brother back here. He's helping me out tonight. We're going to see who can taste the most, getting the most right. So I will be guessing, I'm just with exams and stuff, going down C on all of them. So we'll see if he.
And with my previous COVID,
and we'll see.
I will do my best.
Yes, I was fortunate last time when I did the push-off contest with Megan in the last episode. She had just done arm day, so she's a bodybuilder. So I was like, oh, I have a chance now, and I still got whipped. So, but at least I felt like I was accidentally getting these advantages. So let's go ahead and cut away to the commercial. Let's get this set up, and when we get back, we're gonna do this tasting. All right.
Yes.
All right, so we're just kind of getting finished up here. Daniel's laying out. These are the bourbons. Matter of fact, let me switch to the pre-enter one that takes away the. There we go. That way you guys can kind of see the 5 different ones. And then as soon as Daniel puts that down, he'll maybe let us know what he picked. And did you taste each one to see how you liked it? Or
Oh, yeah.
I've been going through.
Hey,
They're all good.
you're no fool.
Hey, thanks, bro, for doing this too. I
Absolutely.
don't know how I would have done this if he wasn't here. As far as trying to get these things poured and also interview, I probably would try to set up
It's in
beforehand.
order, 1 through 5 here, and 1 through 5 there for you.
Gotcha.
All right, now the way I've got this set up, so I did mark the bottom of the things 1 through 5. What we're going to do is we're just going to kind of taste them, and then we're going to place which one we think is on front of that particular bourbon. I think what we'll do is I'll have you put yours in front, and I'll put mine in
Okay.
back.
And I'm just gonna see what ones we have.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's take a look.
And I can go ahead and
Yeah.
maybe read them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want, feel free to educate us too, as far as like a little something that.
Well, so Long Branch is Matthew McConaughey, and he has a little mesquite to flavor that.
I did not know that.
Evan Williams 1783 is a very inexpensive bourbon that is a good buy.
Yeah, it's one of my first ones. I really liked it.
Old Granddad bonded. Make sure you get the bonded bottled in
Sure
bond.
still alive?
BIB, 100 proof.
Mhm.
That is great for
What
old
about it?
fashions. It's a really, really, really good high rye whiskey.
I'm recording it, so I'll upload it later if I need to.
Gentleman Jack is not actually a bourbon. It's a Tennessee whiskey. It's made just like a bourbon, but before it goes into the barrel, it's charcoal filtered. And in fact, Gentleman Jack is charcoal filtered twice, not like regular Jack Daniels, which is only once. And because of the charcoal filtering called the Lincoln County process, they can't call it a bourbon. Although under NAFTA law, it's a bourbon. Four Roses, we got the small batch select. Jim Rutledge used to be the master distiller. He's responsible for bringing Four Roses back to America. It had disappeared under the Bronfmans and Seagrams. They only sold it in Japan and Germany as true bourbon. Now they've brought it back to the U.S. And now a guy named Brent Elliott, who actually started his career at work in Miamisburg, Ohio, my city. So Small Batch Select is a fantastic bourbon as well. So let me sit these where you guys can see them and see how pretty they are,
Okay.
because part of the deal is pretty.
I think we might have lost. I think got some messages coming in that we might have like lost our connection. But I'm recording it, so I'm just gonna upload it later. So if you like got cut off, don't worry. I'm gonna upload it. Let everybody know I uploaded it, and you can go and watch it. All right. So let's start with numero uno.
Yes.
And let me see here. Oh, you don't smell it, or you do smell it. I just did the exact opposite of what you told me to do.
Well, I sneak up on it.
Oh yeah.
Breathe through your mouth.
Oh, okay, I know which one this one is. Pretty much. It's and well, I won't. I won't tell you.
I'm
But,
pretty sure I know what this is.
Yeah.
This has some rye in it for sure.
well, I'm probably wrong. But I'm gonna put mine right there. I probably should guess first because you're probably more likely right.
I'm going to put them up there after I taste them all. How about that?
Oh, so you already know?
So no, I'm going to
okay.
no, I'm going to put it where I think I'm going to put it. But
Okay.
After I taste, I might change it.
Okay, because I'm gonna forget. Like I'll forget. Like if I put it down over here, I'm like, shit, which one was that again? But I might talk about
Number
why.
2.
Yes. Keep switching my breathing.
Pretty sure you're doing that wrong.
This is kind of a little bit harder one for me because I don't. This. God, this shit's burning. It's like, what was I thinking? I should have done like a wine tasting or something. Woo!
Tony, you want a pen and paper so you can write down for each one what you think it is?
I'm gonna set 'em right
I'm
behind.
putting mine
Right in
behind him, but
front.
he's gonna
Oh,
put his,
okay.
he's putting his in the order that he
All right.
he
Then
knows.
I'll put them up there.
I'm gonna go with. Get this one right here. Oh, we're on that one. Okay. Are you already on number 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Man. All right. I don't know how to like clear the palate on these because it's like.
That's going to be in my next book about whiskey club tastings, which will be my 5th book. I'm going to talk about how to cleanse your palate properly.
Yeah, yeah. At least with the like the Japanese, when you have sushi and stuff, they have the ginger, that you're supposed to use to. Yeah, I don't know. This right here. Ugh. Ugh. That one tastes a little more like rubbing alcohol. Actually, now that I think about it, that was tastes like rubbing.
Yeah. That's a quick tasting, but I'll try to put them where I think.
Hold on, let me get my 4th one here real quick. Let me get my last one here, because otherwise I'll.
I'm a little bit
Actually, I guess I
ahead.
already know where this one's going. Woo! Man.
Want to talk about it a little bit, and then we'll see how
Yeah.
we're doing?
So the first one I felt pretty comfortable with because
What do you think it was?
I think it was Jack Daniels.
Okay, the
because-
first one I would have thought was Old Granddad because I thought it had a lot of rye in it, but we'll see.
And you're probably more refined, but me with
No,
Jack Daniels,
I'm
I feel like the
I
burnings.
don't get the nose. So I've
I
got some taste.
get a very specific burn
Yeah.
with like Jack Daniels. Like out of all the drinks I drink,
Yeah.
I can always tell when it's like Jack Daniels because it's smooth, but it burns
Yeah.
a certain way. What is number 1?
Number 1 was Four Roses.
Really?
Wow,
Oh,
that's
okay.
unbelievable. That normally, Four Roses normally a little softer, and Old Granddad has a nice punch. So okay,
All right. Which one? I don't know which one I put number 2 on. Number 2 I put here at. Except no, that's not the right. That wasn't 2. That was 5. Number 2 I put over here at Four Roses. I put it over there because I didn't know, honestly.
so tell us what one was 7. What one was probably the easiest way. Tell us what number was Long Branch.
Yeah, your Wild Turkey was number 2.
So number 2.
Yeah.
Did you get that one?
Yes.
Okay, I'm over here at Four Roses.
Yes.
On number 2. Let me taste that again though, because I kind of like that. So this number 1 was Four Roses. You said,
Yeah.
right? And you said number 2 was 1783, right?
Have a little taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us what number 3 was.
Number 3 is your. That's your Gentleman's.
Okay.
Oh my God. There's one I thought was
See it.
Old Granddad.
Let me get it over here. Where I can see
The
it.
light. He's going to the light. Oh, I'm gonna look. We're gonna pretend like. What am I looking for? I have a little bit of light here. What am I looking for?
You were looking at the number on the bottom of the cup.
Oh, is that what you're doing? I thought I was looking for like color or consistency or something. So number 3 was Jack.
Number 3 was Jack.
Okay.
You gonna make it through this, bro?
Woo! Holy crap!
I've been back
Yeah.
there drinking whiskey this whole time.
Rap, yeah.
Number 4.
Was Old Granddad.
Huh?
No. Oh, there's 5. Okay, I was off one.
What do you have for
Sorry.
4?
I'm already.
Let me
No, no.
see where I'm at.
This one I had Old Granddad. I haven't gone that one yet.
Yeah. I messed up on Old Granddad,
No.
so I had it as number 1, so that was
Okay.
not right.
Okay, this over.
Number
So-
4 was your Evan Williams.
Let me
That's
see if I can taste
1783.
that.
I gotta hit that one right. Shoot. I tell you where I screwed up.
Yeah.
I screwed up on this one.
And it affected
And this
everything
one.
up, didn't it?
These 2 I had wrong. These 2 I had wrong, and the others I had right. And I thought the more powerful was Old Granddad, and by golly, it was Four Roses.
It was 4 Roses.
Let's drink them.
Well, yeah. Well, at this point,
Let's drink 'em. I like this guy.
so what was number 5?
That was Old Granddad.
Yeah.
Wait, this I can't tell if that's number 2 or number 5.
That's your handwriting.
Well, I think you gave me 2 number 2. Oh, that's a 4. Fuck.
Maybe Tony shouldn't finish it.
No, look.
Never
I
let,
think
never
there are 2
let.
number 2s. Maybe I'm 5.
So I
It wasn't
screwed
2
up.
number
I
2s.
screwed
Oh,
up
that's number
these
5.
2.
That's number 5.
That's a 5.
So I got 3, and I missed 2.
I didn't get shit, and now I'm drunk.
Let me help you out here.
Yeah, here, brothers. That's why you have brothers.
Start with the 4 Roses here.
Now, to go back again on these, I was very surprised. Very surprised by the small batch tasting more powerful on the palate in terms of alcohol and spice than Old Granddad. That's amazing. I would, if that's the case, I would definitely use this in an old fashioned or Manhattan as well.
Yeah.
I have to say that I probably enjoy it more with cigars. But going back between, it really slows down my drinking the bourbons one after the other.
So for me, I'm a fan of
Matthew McConaughey.
I'm a fan of one. I'm a fan of Matthew McConaughey. You know where he vacations? Hidden. What's the lake down in?
Write this down, ladies.
Write this down, ladies.
In southeastern Ohio, there's a state park, and I can't remember the name of the area right now. But he goes there and he takes his family because he wants them to be like regular people. And I'm serious.
Is that why Matthew?
And he takes cases of beer, and just help yourself. Come over and have them. So this guy's great in the community where Wild Turkey is. He helps them every year. Helps buy and pass out over 5,000 turkeys for the holidays.
Wow. That's awesome.
Terrific guy. I'm not the biggest fan of this one though. I like regular Wild Turkey. Evan Williams, supposedly the first master distiller in Kentucky.
That's one of my
could be
favorite.
Argued, but this is a really good bargain one.
It was like one of the first ones I got, and it was actually one of my favorite. Like I would go to the bars and he'd have,
This one's cocktail, and I tell you what, if you like this one, the best bourbon in the world for the price, according to me, is Old Granddad 114 proof. Because you can put ice in it and sip it. And by the time you're done, you still got a drink.
Start
you don't
forest
have water.
fires with it. That's a lot of proof.
Yeah. Gentleman Jack, when I first started drinking whiskey, was one of my favorites. It's a little bit more mild than I prefer at this point.
Honestly, I actually just got this in my collection because I felt like I needed a Jack Daniels in there.
Why not? You got to do it.
But just so you guys know, there were like 2 drinks that have effect on me emotionally.
Yeah.
That affect my personality. And that is one, Jack Daniels, not Gentleman's Jack, the basic Jack Daniels.
Yeah, number 7.
Number 7. That'll have me flipping tables and fighting grandmas.
Yeah.
And then of course honey whiskey, Jack Daniels honey whiskey has me flirting with everybody.
Yeah.
Every waitress, every guy.
It makes
I flirt with
beautiful.
everybody. That's my friends take me out and give me honey whiskey. Just to see how ridiculous I get.
Can I tell you a quick story about Jack Daniels and George Dickel?
Okay.
So if you go to Jack Daniels, they'll tell you it's old number 7. It's their 7th mash bill. And aren't you glad we didn't go any farther? And then you go to George Dickel and it's old number 8. And they say, aren't you glad we went one more
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So 4 Roses, last one. 4 Roses.
4 Roses is... Their products are always fantastic. They're just really nice. 4 Roses was a recipient of all, all 5 yeast that Seagram used in all throughout the U.S. and Canada. So as they closed distilleries, they were the recipient of the yeast, and they make 2 mash bills. And they make each of those 2 mash bills against all of the different yeast. So that gives them 10 different products that they can blend. So single barrel obviously won't be blended at all. But the small batch will be, and then they do a special small batch every year where the master distiller, Brent Elliott, will pick, or Jim Rutledge before him will pick what will go in it. And that's always phenomenal. And then their yellow label kind of gets the residual, but it's a good bargain bourbon as well. But at one time when I was probably your age, 4 Roses wasn't bourbon; it was a blended whiskey, a lot like Canadian whiskey. Oh, here's one for you.
Yeah,
Canadian whiskey.
Let's go ahead and have a seat.
Canadian whiskey. You know where most of it's made?
Ohio,
Canada.
Indiana.
Say the way he asked it, I knew it had to be like
MGP.
anywhere but Canada.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell all the folks out here, they make for craft distilleries to help get them started. They make a lot of Canadian. They have stills that they make what's called lighter whiskey. It's distilled to a little lower proof, and that goes up to Canada for blending. And they also send them some of their bourbon up there to add flavor to the blend. So that was all started by Seagram's. So if you look at the old Seagram's whiskeys, and it would be like number 7 up to Crown Royal, or not Crown Royal, but oh gosh, I'm trying to think what the name was, but it was a top flight Seagram's product. But anyway, they would use column distilled whiskeys that they were really like commercial stuff that's just not flavored that much, and then they'd add in some good bourbon and rye to improve it. But MGP, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, if you ever get a rye whiskey from a craft distiller and they say, well, this is bottled here, or this is from here, but it doesn't say distilled here, and you look at it and it says it's 95% rye or 95.5, I'll just about guarantee it's made in Lawrenceburg, Indiana at MGP, which is the old Seagram's plant, which I think goes back to 1850s.
Wow, okay.
And that's one of the 2 or 3 largest distilleries in North America.
Wow.
And
road trip.
Yeah, pretty neat. So I tell you what, I've really enjoyed the evening, and Antonio's a great guy to know. He really is, and that story we read was phenomenal. I loved it.
Thank you.
Can't wait to read some more of them. So here I am as a guest, but I'm going to put a plug in. If you don't have his books, you ought to look at getting them, especially the short stories, because I don't know how you are, but as for me, if I get into a real big novel and I got to get up and go to work in the morning, it may not work out well. But if I got short stories, bam, I can do 1 or 2. I enjoy them. I have a nice glass of whiskey or a glass of wine while I'm doing it. It's very pleasurable, and I can get to bed and I don't feel guilty about not reading the whole daggone book.
Right.
So, and I try to write mine the same way. So you've got segments, and you can stop, and you're okay.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I do want to go ahead and kind of build off that, too. So I am focusing on one, kind of like building my my platforms, and also I wanted to get into doing more charity work or giving to more charity. I always thought when I got to a certain point, I would start doing more charity, but I was like, what, I'm just going to start now. So what I'm kind of doing now is that if you want to help out, so I'm choosing a different charity every quarter. Good. And I'm trying to keep it as local as possible. So this quarter, I'm actually looking at Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Good.
So I'll actually have the description below to where you can go. I'm not taking money. You go directly to them if you want to donate. But if you do want to help me and also help them, for every new like that I get between now and March 31st on YouTube, I will be donating $1 up to $100 to Big Brothers Big Sisters. Every book that I sell up to $100, I'll also be donating $1, and then every new like on my Facebook book page, I'll contribute $1 up to $100. So you can potentially, just by supporting me, have me donate up to $300 to Big Brothers Big Sisters.
That's awesome.
Also, I'll be doing a drawing from everybody who likes on YouTube, Facebook, and buys a copy of one of my volumes here, and enter a drawing to win another one of my books. So I'll be drawing from that pool to give out a free copy of either Sins of the Fathers, Volume 1 or Volume 2. So, but yeah, just so a little, something to kind of help me grow, but also kind of do that. And thank you so much for coming on here. Make sure that you get on Amazon, take a look at his books. I mean, it's just very insightful. Just hearing you the last hour was been like so educational. Like, most people don't. I thought I was starting to get there just drinking the bourbon cigars. It is about enjoyment, but I really like, that's really the knowledge that you brought to this was phenomenal. The poetry, unexpected, but phenomenal. Thank you for helping me narrate my story too. It's always a good time. And then, of course, doing a little bourbon tasting. I'm already feeling, after drinking the beer, I'm feeling pretty good now. Luckily, I don't have to go anywhere.
I do have one thing I want to say, and it's a compliment to you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, in my next book that just came out, Sayings of My Father, he talks about generosity. And so let me just tell you the essence of the story. Have you ever dreamed of winning the lottery and how generous you could be? And I go on and talk about it. But I conclude that section with this. What are you doing now? This guy's doing something. He's doing something. Help him out.
Yeah. And of course, like I said, I'll have the link below. So even if you don't want to necessarily go the routes, you want to donate to them directly, I'll have the link to their website below too. And if you know any local charities that you think would benefit from this, like every quarter I want to choose a different one, preferably around the Dayton area, but I don't mind doing it nationally. But I like to kind of work my way out. Just feel free to message me as well too. Again, Fred, thank you so much for joining me. It was not intentional that the main character in the story was Fred. That just was a happy coincidence. Yeah, it was pretty enjoyable. I don't know how weird it was for him reading his own name over and over again, but it was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Fred, for joining me and helping me with my story, telling us about your books. I'll have all of his links in the description below. And so, be sure to tune in next week. I won't be doing anything next week, but the following week, I'll actually be doing a remote interview with another author out of Florida. Nice. I tell you, support your local writers, your local artists, musicians. They really put a lot of heart and soul into the love of the art. And I just realized on a little button thing here, I don't have the goodbye message on there. So I'm going to have to walk up there like the good old days. Yeah. I didn't have it and be all awkward looking at the camera. So I know this kind of cut off. So I'll be uploading this video to YouTube and Facebook tomorrow or overnight. So, you won't. You didn't miss anything. Just fast forward to where it stopped streaming. So again, Fred, thank you so much. I'm going to awkwardly stand over here and just kind of slowly walk over here and then click to the last. We got to turn my mouse on first and go to the end credits. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you again.